Karp is an author, novelist. Yes, I started with the August, and that was it. I'm a Zabriskie, so I know how that goes. Jesse is a librarian, a scholar, a novelist, and a nonfiction author who is a long time comic book collector and aficionado, and the only guy that I know who has not only touched Spider-Man #1, but actually owns a copy of Spider-Man #1. Oh, okay, all right. And then to my immediate right is Gus Polakis, who is the owner and proprietor of Silver Edge Comics. The man's been a great friend to us as we've gone through in the preparations for this program and for this process. And the discussion topic that we're going to be having today is about grading and collecting. It's kind of an open discussion. I'm sure that I hope that we'll be able to have some dialogue and some questions back and forth. I just want to open up right off the bat talking to these gentlemen. Gus, when you're grading a book, what are the 3 steps? What are your steps for grading the books? I brought in a book, you're looking at it. What are the steps that you go through?
Well, to get to that point, you really have to have been looking and grading comics for a long time.
Sure.
First step is you'll take a book and you'll come up with a grade right off the top. Now, obviously, the higher the grade is, everything matters.
Okay.
If it's a beautiful copy, if it's a 9.0 or a 9.2, you just look for any little imperfection, any line-breaking stress, and you just go by, 2 points.
Okay, what's line-breaking stress?
Like, if the spine has a crease here.
Okay.
Now, some of them break color and some of them do not. If it breaks color, then it's obviously defect. So I generally look at a book and I'll get a general grade. Okay. And then I'll take it from there. Can I make it higher? Should I make it lower? Look at pages, stains, things like that, chips, stuff like that. So it's kind of, would you say it's an art or a science? A little bit of both.
A little bit of both.
Yeah, a little bit of both. Because there are grading standards out there. And Overstreet kind of set the precedent. And kind of old school people kind of grade different. Well, today's high-end collectors kind of grade differently than they did, let's say, 20, 30 years ago.
Okay.
Like, when I was growing up, if you had an 8.0 copy, which was a VF copy, at a scale of 10, okay, it was a great copy, it was a respectable copy. Now the high-end, it's like not even a big deal to them. And I think CGC, which is a third-party grading system, kind of created that, where, comics are not really rare. I mean, they're a business. They need to produce a lot. I mean, obviously a lot of them get damaged over the years. So when you have a shrinking market going after the same books, and they have money, they want as close to 10 as possible and drives up the price.
And what would be a 10?
I kind of don't believe there is a 10, but some of the more modern books do grade up 10. And it's generally because the paper stock is better. Cover's thick, a really good paper stock, and it looks like it's flawless. But like there's an amazing Spider-Man #1, 9.8 out there, and I know the guy who owns it. And I'm willing to bet everything on it. It's not really a 9.8. Tom Pilato, you know Tom Pilato?
Yeah, I don't even know if a 9.8 could exist anymore.
Yeah, well, they say it's really beautiful, but
What about you, Jesse? When you're looking at books to buy, are you looking at grades, or are you mostly focusing on the storylines and the story arcs that you're interested in? As a kind of, because we've got a collector and a collector as well, I'm sure, but a guy who's on the other side too. So I think it's kind of interesting.
I really started out collecting just because I loved comic books, and Spider-Man in particular, though I have branched out. Once I managed to get a complete run of Spider-Mans, I was late enough in life where it was like, I don't want to start putting time into a whole other superhero now who could have hundreds and hundreds of issues. So instead, I just started perfecting my Spider-Man series again. So I got more serious about the grading and stuff. And it was just about the time, as Gus was saying, that the CGC had come in and changed the grading system. So that was incredibly frustrating. And I started to sort of crash and burn there. I gave up a little bit on my grading. Did it look good enough or not look good enough? Once upon a time, though, I could tell you when a comic book came out within 3 or 4 years by smelling it. The acid content, and I was about 90% accurate. So I would probably never have been as technically accurate as Gus, but out of sheer affection, my body was so in tune with them that that's the kind of collector I was.
So how big is your collection?
My collection went from about 25,000 comics a bunch of years ago, and I had to move in with my wife. So 25,000 comics was not going to do for us anymore, and it went down to about 10,000. That was, I don't know, 10 or 13 years ago. Since then, it has probably moved back up, despite my wife's protests, to about 15 or 16,000.
Okay, Gus, how many, now I know you've got, I know your store well, it's a great store, I know you got a lot of graphics and graphic novels there as well, but if we're talking old school, traditional comic books, about how many do you think you probably have on the floor? And then I know you got a separate storage unit as well. Okay, a lot. Right.
Come with maybe somewhere, 150 to 200.
And you move part of your stock to shows when you need to as well, right?
Yeah, I'll be doing that next weekend.
Okay. Okay, so you're gonna be
look a little sparse there.
Okay. And you were you at a con just like last month as well?
I was in Chicago in August and San Diego in July.
So if you're a guy who owns a respectable, functioning, working comic store now, you've got to have an on-the-road show as well. That's what it seems like.
Well, today's comics, unless you're Midtown Comics, you're an asset. Most comic book stores have to do shows or do some kind of online. It's really hard to just do retail and you got to sell a lot of graphic novels and a lot of new comics. Make sure your sell-through is pretty good to stay in business because it's not like the late 80s and 90s where the collecting community was probably 5 times the size it is now. Regardless of all the media attention, pop culture, kids love that stuff, but it doesn't translate to comics.
You said 5 times what?
What was that?
He just wanted you to speak a little louder.
Oh, okay, I will.
You're asking 5 times what? What did you say?
5 times?
Yeah, there were probably about 5 times as many collectors
First time
as
Yeah.
in the 90s.
Huh?
Collectors were like 5 times larger.
Gus, you mentioned the cons. I'm going to throw this at Jesse first, and then I'm going to come back to you. Any suggestions on how to not get ripped off at a con, what you should be looking for at a con, what you can do to maximize your buying at a con, or should you go in with a list of the books you're looking for? Is leaving yourself open a better strategy? Is that going to depend on the person? What's your thoughts, Jesse?
The absolute primary strategy for doing your best at a con is, especially if you're looking for specific things, don't buy it the first time you see it. There are going to be many other ones there. Check it out. Remember where it was? Go around, look at all the different copies, compare the prices. Chances are you want one that's priced somewhere in the middle. I have found personally, and Gus maybe will bear me out, that most of the people I've dealt with, most of the dealers I've dealt with, have been pretty fair-minded. Speaking of, more independent stores like that, places like Midtown and stuff, I tend not to buy back issues and stuff from them. They feel a little too big and corporate for me. But generally speaking, they seem fairly fair-minded to me, and I don't remember getting ripped off for the most part, not, with pages missing or cutouts or anything like that. And,
Sure.
But, if you're a little concerned, ask the guy, ask him to take it out in front of you, and they'll do it. There's no better way to check than actually seeing it and feeling it and smelling it if you can.
And you can only bring so much money. So you don't I mean, grab a deal, I want you to overspend, but you really have to stay focused because there's a lot of stuff out there. And like you said, most dealers are, I mean, I know all those guys.
Right.
And they're, you know, no one's perfect, we make mistakes.
Yeah.
You know, if it's a $20 book and there's a Marvel stamp out, I could miss it, you know. But if it's a Hulk 181, the first Wolverine, absolutely, that's the first thing we check is the Marvel stamp because it's so common that it's missing. So, you know, so for the most part, the dealers, you know, you have to do your homework. You have to know how to grade, you know. Because some dealers, though, which is my biggest pet peeve with my peers, is they'll throw a price on the book. Right? You ever notice that? There's no grade. So then you're stuck there, okay. All right. And some of them are the nicest guys in the world.
Sure.
You know, and a lot of them focus on the high end. So if the book, because and I know why they do it, because sometimes a book presents better than it will grade.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like you could have a super beautiful looking copy, but collectively the defects, if you go through the whole book, can knock it down.
Okay.
Like, you know, the book could look like, let's say, a 9.0 out of a 10, but the grades collect the little defects. You know, sometimes IAPL counts could knock that down.
Sure.
So, what was I going with that?
Well, just how to handle the self-con, you know?
Right, so the dealers with the, so, they, see with me, you know, we all make mistakes. Try to handle the mistakes that makes you professional. Like, I'll have a grade on every single one of my comics. So you can look at it and you can either agree with it or you can disagree with my grade. But you know where my head's at.
Right.
Whether I'm off 0.5 or you know where I'm at. Because I give you a grade on every single book. Some dealers, it just throw a price on it. And it's infuriating because sometimes I want to buy for myself or I want to buy for a company. But I know all the guys, so I'm going to get the deal.
Right.
So they'll just throw an enormous price up there. So you got to really do your homework, keep within your budget, and stay focused. There's a lot of stuff.
What's the lowest grade you'll stock?
I'll stock anything.
Okay.
Because there are collectors for, I mean,
I'm a story-driven author.
Well,
I'm a story-driven
yeah,
collector.
I mean,
If it's
sure.
free, I'll still read it if the pages are all there. So,
what would I rather have? The first appearance of Spider-Man without a cover? Or, you know, the first appearance of Wolverine in 2 of them?
right.
On Amazing Fantasy 15 without the cover, right? I mean, there's value in stuff. Because not everyone has the money.
Right.
You know, and some guys are completists. Sounds like Jesse is, which is, you know, once you finish your title. See, you know, it's always nice to cross off the title.
Right.
And then you move on to the next one. The market's changing. The market's changing a lot now. I mean, it's always refreshing when someone comes to my table and they have a want list and they're crossing it out. Instead of the guy looking for the mistake. Well, do you have anything high grade that you made a mistake on so I can buy it and send it to CGC and make money? You know, the day traders.
Right.
It's always refreshing to have a guy with a list that crosses off the numbers. You know?
Can I say something about that?
Yeah,
Actually,
absolutely.
there seems to me there are 2 kinds of collectors. There's the kind that's
There's 3.
doing. Okay.
There's the
I
readers,
can't wait
too.
to hear the
The
third.
readers.
Yeah, well, that was the other. You know, there are people who are doing this just for an investment, and they're looking for your mistakes, or they're looking for. Then they'll go through the copies when they're new, you know, one at a time to find the best one in there. And there are people who love the characters, who are reading the stories, who love the artists, who love the object itself rather than the money that it represents. So, I mean, speaking for myself, and what you said about condition, what's the lowest condition in stock? I just wanted to be able to have a Golden Age Captain America, right? Those are not cheap. But I have a full run of Silver Age and on Captain Americas. I just wanted a Golden Age. I looked around and around, and there's so much. Finally, I found one that was old and beat up, but you could still see, you know, what the cover was. You could still read the comic, and I got it for a manageable price, and I have it. And that's what's important to me, right? I'm not going to sell it again, but I have the thing, so the condition is less valuable than that.
What's your third form?
Well, there's like a there's the readers, like I have a handful of good customers and stuff. I mean, they'll buy everything. And they absolutely read everything. But they'll also put it in the back of the board. You know, their main thing is not investment. It's a good solid thing if it happens to appreciate it. So there's kind of the investor, there's kind of the collector, and then there's well, I guess the collector is also a reader too.
I'd be interested, one of the thing that really set off this entire event for us is the donation, this anonymous donation of this pretty decent collection of books, right? I mean, you've seen it's an okay collection, right? And a lot of times what happens is that people will donate stuff and it'll just be a bunch of stuff from the 90s, and you'll see these collections will come in, and it'll be Wolverine issue 100, and we'll have 50 copies of them, and this is a person's collection, this is an individual, and he's got 50 copies of this book, and only one of them's ever had the cellophane broken. And so there's this kind of sea of stuff from the 90s that's out there.
Well, that's a big production. Yeah.
Well, that was my question. It's like, how do you kind of separate the wheat from the chaff, and what's your cutoff on when things are interesting and when they got less interesting? Do you have that? Does it depend on the book?
It depends on the character. It depends on the writer. It depends on I mean, Valiant. Jim Shooter was doing Valiant in the early '90s, and it was good stuff. Obviously, there was a speculation shortly after the first 6 months or so. It got weak, but they gave you a good story.
Right.
They gave you the simple sequential art storytelling, and it was a good read.
Right.
You don't know. You know, I mean, Wolverine, number one. All right, Frank Miller's writing Wolverine. No brainer. You just order a gazillion and it's over. You know, it all depends. It all depends. You know, I keep sales of sheets of what I sell.
Gotcha.
And there's normally if there's a specific storyline and they're promoting it, you might plus or minus 10 or. The anomaly comes with something fresh and brand new, which is, and Marvel's notorious for this. They'll always try to take up your shelves with their product, kind of like Coke and Pepsi fighting for market, shelf space in the supermarket. So they'll do all these mini-series, and they'll, Captain America, okay, I know I can sell 100 caps, but what could I sell in this mini-series? And sometimes they're good, and sometimes they're bad.
Sure.
So, and that's where got stuck with stuff by taking the chance. Like the 52, for instance, I sold out of everything, not because I ordered a lot. I was very concerned. And why was I concerned? Because the whole online community was bashing it.
Right.
Everyone was ripping it,
Right. Well,
And so I didn't go crazy, and I sold out. And I kind of missed the boat in the first 2 weeks. But now I'm seeing a month into it, the same numbers are coming, are going to be happening. There was no reason for the relaunch. Because you're going to get a bump on the first two, and then when times 3 and 4 comes along, everyone's going to go back. Unless they really, there's certain good ones. Like I heard Swamp Thing was really good. And that might be something, or Animal and stuff.
I have a question about that, actually, if I could ask that.
Yeah, sure.
You said how the online community was really down on it, but then you managed to sell out.
Because the fans are really bad at that.
That's
Alex, I wanted to bring that up, saying, well, it's up to the buyers to. Yes and no, because the fan is something else.
It's a dangerous beast.
Yeah, I mean, you can bash the comic, but you're still going to buy it.
But that's what that guy
You're still gonna buy
sitting here for the last thing was saying they're messing with DC's continuity. Is that bad for their history? I'll bet you he bought out every single issue of it. That fans are really, really critical of stuff like that, but then they keep buying.
Yeah.
So what kind of a message are we
That's
sending?
their
Like the
comic.
Spider-Man Brand New Day thing. Everybody complained about it. Everybody's still complaining about it, but I don't think Marvel is seeing a dip in sales.
Well, no, but I have like two really, really good customers. Like, you know, normally if you have a customer, and he's a big customer, you know, 20, 30 books a week, there's no way that Spider-Man's not going to be on his pull list, you know? But I have two customers, everything, that dropped Amazing Spider-Man at that point. I haven't gone back to it. And I have a customer coming in with a Steinway, and he's spending $100, $150, and there's no Amazing Spider-Man, with the biggest selling comic. Yeah. Yeah.